70s, after school on the day new comics came out, I had to ride my bike to like 5 different places around town. And if anybody is my age or a little younger, a little older, you know what I'm talking about. You had to go to the grocery stores had spinner racks, and drug stores had racks, and they all got different comic books. So you had to hit every one of these places. And I had 5 different places I had to hit like every Tuesday after school on my bike. And you want to get there quick to get copies off the spinner racks before kids got in there and bent all the comics down with the spinner racks. So during that time, I used to go to gun shows with my dad, and those were kind of like flea markets back in the 70s. And there was a young guy set up there with 3 boxes of comic books. It's the first time we ever saw comic books at a gun show, and he had them in these bags. I'd never seen comic books in bags before. This was around 1975, 76. And my dad said, pick out whatever you want, and I'll buy them for you. And by this time I was really heavy into Marvel. Marvel was everything to me, especially Fantastic Four, because my dad had almost every issue of the Fantastic Four, so I grew up reading those, issues 2, 3. He didn't have issue number 1. He had issue 2 up through issue 100, and so I'd read those over and over and over and over. And so Marvel meant everything to me. Stan Lee meant everything to me. Anybody that grew up at that time and read the bullpen bulletins, Stan was speaking right to you. It was like you belonged to an exclusive club, and it was really a neat thing back then. And so I pulled out $35 worth of comic books, which in 1976 was a lot of money. My dad ended up buying them all for me.
You pulled out more than 3 then, huh?
And he also had this thing called a price guide, the Overstreet price guide. I'd never seen that before. And my dad asked him if he wanted to sell it, and he said yes. And we bought this price guide, and I went up into my room and stayed there for like 2 weeks and memorized this thick price guide. All the prices, all the titles. It just really opened my eyes. And so then I started selling comics at these gun shows also, trying to sell comics. And this guy that sold me the price guide, I started meeting him at the racks when I make my rounds to the different shops to get comic books. And there was a small group of us that we'd keep seeing at the different grocery stores and drug stores and whatnot to get the comics. And Mike was his name, or is his name, and he decided that he was going to talk to one of the distributors and start selling comic books out of his basement if he could get enough people that would purchase from him. So he ended up finding about 12 people that would purchase comic books from him and started getting them in and selling them out of his basement. And we thought that was great. We're in one place, and not only do you get to buy the comics, but you get to sit there and talk with people about the comic books. And that eventually led to him opening up a small store. And then he moved to a bigger store. And I was with him every step of the way, helping him move and so on and so forth. And after, it was sometime in the, after I graduated high school, and I actually went to college to become a police officer. And that didn't turn out so good. Kind of had change of plans that being a police officer just wasn't for me. And so I'd worked at a grocery store for about 8 years, and he said, hey, I'm going to open a store in Cedar Falls, Iowa. You want to run it for me? And I was like, heck yeah. So we spent all that summer in 1988 getting a small store ready, and opened it up in July of 1988. And not only did we carry comic books, but we had to carry baseball cards, which I was not a sports fan. I knew nothing about sports cards and had to learn real fast everything about baseball. And computer games at the time, which were brand new. Macintosh, Apple, and IBM. 3 different ones, and knew nothing about them, didn't play them, and there was no markup on them. If you spent $50 on it, you had the cost, you'd price it at $55. What's the point of carrying something like that when you make it $5 on a $50 profit? Comic books were huge though. When we opened up, I remember the first 2 kids that came in, they went crazy and ended up buying $20 each of comic books. And I soon had to hire 4 people to work there. And we eventually moved to a larger location, which is where we're at now. And back then, the store was called Oak Leaf Comics. That was the original owner's name for it, which I never liked because I'm much more into marketing. And Oak Leaf just didn't mean anything. And as things progressed, a few quick stories, the death of Superman. When that happened, it was insane. We never had a day like that before. We had a line. In fact, I ordered in, back then when Spawn #1 came out, I remember that we ordered 2,000 copies of Spawn #1, and we probably sold half of those the first week. That's how many people were buying comics. We had to have 4 people at the store on New Comic Book Day because the place would be jam-packed with not only kids, but adults buying comic books. When the death of Superman happened, I took a chance on that and ordered, I believe, 5,000 copies. And first hour, nobody came in. And I was getting really worried because we had a lot of money invested in those comic books. So a small trick I thought I'd do was I'd put over, and we had a whole wall filled with the comic books. And so I made a sign that said limit of 5 per customer, making people think that you know, all you can get is 5. Well, within the first hour after I put that up, I had to go change that to 3. And then by noon I had to change it to 2, and by 1 o'clock I had to change it to 1 per family. Because people were coming in droves wanting as many copies as they could get. We had the line the entire day going out to the street. It was insane. It was a slow news day. And
did they have the news and like, did they have TV out there or like the newspaper out there?
It was on the news because again, it was a slow news day, so it made all the news stations. That morning, I guess around the noon news, nationwide, I guess, did a big story, did big stories on it. And if it had been something else going on that day, I don't think as many people, you know, they needed a filler that day. It was obviously a slow day.
I know I got into the picture of the comic store that was here in town.
Oh,
In the Gazette.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I know I got it somewhere and it just cracks me up. There's so many people in that store. It was ridiculous.
It was insane. And when we told people it was 1 per person, people were getting angry. People were calling on the phone from, I remember getting phone calls from Des Moines, wanting us to ship comics, buy them over the phone. I'm like, I don't have enough for my people. I still got people outside. And people get angry and swearing and why can't you sell me 10 copies? And we kept it at cover price until we sold out. And we kept them, we sold out, New Comic Day back then was on a Friday. And we sold out Sunday, I think 2 hours after we opened, so by keeping it to them. But we'd have customers that all of a sudden were having, you know, entire families show up. I mean, kids that were 3 years old handed me, you know, a $5 bill for, and it's like, wait a minute, are you with him and him and him and him and him? Yeah, so it was an interesting time. It was a great time. Of course, speculation was at a high, and everybody thought that they'd be able to put their kids through college with these comic books 10 years, 20 years down the road. That's not how it works, because there were hundreds of thousands of this comic made, and the only time that comic was worth anything was the first 2 months after it came out. After that, I don't even buy them from people because I have nobody that wants them. They're all out there. We get a phone call at least once a month of somebody wanting to sell us one, but it's all a supply and demand thing. And if something's not rare, it's not going to stay up in value.
Around the same time, how do you guys deal with Marvel and DC trading cards?
Trading cards were huge back then, before gaming cards started,
And
before
then
Magic the
Pog-
Gathering started.
Pog did a bunch of stuff too for comics stuff.
But they would, trading cards back then, they'd put these foil cards inside. And my gosh, we'd sell boxes and boxes and boxes of them. When the card game started, like Magic the Gathering, the whole trading card market, at least in our area, collapsed. Nobody wanted just regular trading cards, they wanted something they could play. Yeah.
Did you sense the burst coming, or were you just like a lot of people and thought, well, it's good, but it can't, you know?
Last forever.
You know, I
You
learned it the hard way. You really don't want to think that it's gonna burst. That was also at the time that Valiant Comics, if people remember the Valiant Comics, that were just
Harbinger and many
as
others.
soon as an issue came out, it would be selling for $10. And only time I ever did this was with Valiant Comics to prove to some of my employees. I don't remember which one it was, let's say it was Harbinger or something like that. Put it on the shelf, cover price the new day, and we took 2 issues, put them in a bag and board, priced it $1 higher and stuck it in the back issues, and we sold the 2 back issues before we sold any. People were just, the speculation was crazy back then. Of course, that whole crashed and burned, and I learned about that with the return of Superman.
From coming from
About
the
a
coma.
year,
Yeah.
a year and a couple months later after the death of Superman. And I thought, everybody's gonna want this. Everybody's gonna want this. Well, I got a picture of me sitting on cases. We made a throne out of the cases of Return of Superman. And me sitting upon it that we couldn't sell. Nobody wanted it. It was the whole, and when that happened, and the Valiant crashed, and all these speculators got out of there, we used to have people that would come in and buy 20 copies of each issue of Spawn. And when that all crashed, comic shops across the country went out of business. And the only way we kept going was of a card game called Pokemon.
Gotta catch them all.
Never saw anything like that in our lives. Kids would be coming in. We'd have to have, I know on Saturdays, we'd have to have all our employees there because we'd have 50 kids in the store wanting to buy, sell, and trade cards. First thing on Saturday mornings all the time. It was crazy. We couldn't keep anything in stock. We couldn't buy cards fast enough. Yeah.
So have you learned to do a balance where you can make a good, like something really hits like Pokemon or
I tell people I'm in no means rich. When people ask me, what's going to be hot, it still surprises me today. And
well, do you still buy a lot? I'm just, so you don't not so you get rich, so you don't lose your store. I'm asking, have you struck a good balance where you make a good profit on something's hot, but you don't lose it when it runs cold?
Oh yeah. It's the last one that I did that I thought was really going to be hot and really taught me a lesson was Spider-Man India, if anybody remembers that. And I thought for whatever reason that was going to be huge, and ordered 500 copies, and maybe we sold 10. And, most of those, unfortunately, I think ended up going into the landfill or something like that. We couldn't even give them away. Yes.
I had a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards I collected before the flood, and since they're gone, I now have a small collection.
Yeah. Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh became popular after Pokemon crashed. Pokemon crashed around 2001.
And I was a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, and I'm watching Yu-Gi-Oh on Netflix, the classic one.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh has come back. Pokemon has come back, huge. All the kids that used to play it are back collecting it. Let me see, any other major things that have happened? Yeah,
Is Magic the Gathering still strong?
Magic's huge.
Yeah.
It always will be.
The only time Magic the Gathering for us, and again, it's different in every community, the only time Magic died for us was when a game came out called Warlord.
Oh God.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, everybody that played Magic
Went over.
stopped and played Warlord. And Warlord we couldn't keep in stock, and then just within a year, Warlord crashed. You couldn't even give packs away, and the gaming community is very fickle. You can never figure out.
I had a buddy that had all the Warlord stuff, the castles, the everything, had all the molds and everything. Wanted to sell them for thousands of dollars. And I waited a year, and now he's trying to sell them for less than like $20.
Yeah.
And they had cases full, the whole 9 yards, everything. Yeah, no, it was like the craziest thing to come out of nowhere. But the question I was curious of, how do you deal with when people come in with older comic books that are both that could seem like they could be valuable, but they're just worn and everything else, and they've shown their age?
eBay has changed how, and the internet has changed how comic books are sold anymore. Back price guide wise and pricing wise, back before the internet, let's say a comic book was worth, well, let's just go with Fantastic Four #1, because that always sticks out in my head. There were three main grades: good condition, fine condition, mint condition. If it was $200 in good, $400 in fine, $600 in mint. It would just go up the, if it was $10 in good, $20, $30. That has changed because now with, of course, the whole CGC grading comics and having them sent in and paying for the privilege of them encapsulating a comic book that you'll never be able to read. Those same comic books, say that comic book was $200, $400, and $600. That same comic book today for Fantastic Four #1, yeah, it's $200 in good condition. Fine condition, it might be $600, $700, but in mint condition, could be $50,000. It's changed drastically because, and it's not because of comic book collectors. You got Wall Street people now investing in all these comic books and know nothing about comic books. They priced the comic book collector out of the hobby.
Yep.
And everything is now, it has to be graded to get any decent price on it. And as you mentioned about lower priced comic books, a lot of lower grade comic books, a lot of lower grade comic books for non-popular titles have just sank because, again, the internet and everybody and their brother has their comic books up there, and most of them are in well-read condition. So again, it's a whole supply and demand thing. There's so many out there that are in well-read condition that the prices have actually gone down for the lower grade ones. But if it's like perfect, it goes right up there.
Since you had a comic book shop within the side of illustration and printing being pushed out so much, and ink and everything being in pristine condition, was it a lot more harder to see books like from between 88 and from present, to see them in worse condition, like to see them in bad condition, like if it was like a book that was before like 1980 or any?
Oh, you mean because of the Baxter paper and stuff like that?
Because they changed it.
They changed the paper. I still see them all in bad condition. I do. Stuff that's brought in, I turn down 95% of what's brought into me when people bring stuff in. I mean, I can't use it. I have boxes of comic books for $1 each. I don't need any more. Every once in a while, there's still a gem. One time I had a person bring enough a box of crappy comic books, and I'm going through them, and it's a junk, Fantastic Four #1 right there.
Really?
Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. I was in shock. She was so happy. I was so happy. But that's few and far in between. Everything that's brought into me is mostly stuff after the 90s, and it's just stuff we cannot use. Other questions?
I could do this all day. Sorry.
What's the most common comic book you have people bring in trying to sell?
Westerns.
Yeah.
We get Westerns, all the 1950s and 60s Westerns. Roy Rogers and Gene Autry, all the time. And they're well read, they were loved, but I have no customers for them.
No demand for that.
All the time.
All the time.
I have no idea what to do.
And you know what? Other ones that used to be brought in that we used to pass on, and now I take another closer look, are Archies. All of a sudden, a huge interest in Archies, but they got to be higher grade because Archies were read by kids, and kids,
for both the Reader's Digest and also the regular ones.
Oh yeah, I mean certain issues of Archies, even from the 70s.
Right now, the most high-rated Archie is number 161, and that's just because of a font where he took on two guys at the same time.
Oh
so
yeah,
it's
I know the one you're talking
play
about.
on words.
You have to beat two guys up.
It beat off two guys.
Covers.
Yeah, the racy covers are the good ones, and then a lot of stuff dealing with Jughead. People are still into that.
Yeah, and because a whole new generation has found out about the Archie characters through
Riverdale.
which I found interesting at first, but I can barely handle watching it without
They've
screaming
let
at
off
the TV.
from the actual thing. Yeah.
Yes.
What else do you offer besides comics in your store?
Comic books, again, we carry, I think, the largest selection of new comic books in Iowa anymore. We have a huge selection of back issues. We carry Magic the Gathering singles, Pokemon singles.
Do you have room in your store where people can actually come and play?
We have magic tournaments every Wednesday and Friday night. For pre-releases for Magic, we run 5 of them. We run because they're now allowing us to do it on Friday afternoon. So we do 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and 1 on Sunday. We do War Machine, which is a miniatures game. Those are on Thursday nights. We do Pokemon on Monday nights. We just started a new D&D group because we got somebody that was willing to be a dungeon master, and that I think is on Thursday nights also. I'm never working the nights there anymore, so I'm not quite positive, but yeah.
Have you ever thought about expanding since you've?
Yeah, we did expand, yes.
Oh, you did
We
expand.
opened up a second store back in 2003 in Waverly, Iowa, which was about a half hour away, and we thought it was gonna do better than the one in Cedar Falls, and it was the biggest mistake I ever made in my life.
How was it towards that? For myself, I'm a person that wants to branch into doing this stuff and everything. And how is it towards wanting to expand into something bigger or something? Is it location usually?
We had great location, man. We were right on Main Street in this beautiful old
Beautiful historic
historic
building. It was great. I mean,
storefront,
just gorgeous.
completely different from
Right
our other
across
store.
the street from the theater, the
The
movie
theater, and this was when all the comic book movies were starting to come out.
Really?
So we would buy out, we would buy out the midnight showings for all these comic book movies and just fill it up with comic book fans.
Yeah.
And free comic book day there,
Yeah.
I had 5 people come in.
Really? Wow.
5 people.
Wow.
But when we were getting it ready, we had everybody in town coming by and it's like, we can't wait for you to open. This is wonderful. Oh, it's going to be so great. And there was not much to do in Waverly, although it is a college town. It has Wartburg. And the first day we opened, it was, and I've been in retail since 1983. I never had the experiences that I did that first month in Waverly. It was, people didn't want to spend any money.
Really?
They would, what we would hear, and we kept track like 30 times within a 3-week period, was, this is a great store, but I left my wallet at home. Now, I've never had anybody say that to me ever until I started at Waverly, and we had people say a variation of that. Oh, I left my purse at home. Oh, I left the money in the car. Nobody would buy anything.
Yeah.
The only thing that kept that store open of all things was the Lord of the Rings card game. For some reason, the town really liked that, and they would come and buy packs and packs and packs of Lord of the Rings card games.
So how long was it open till?
2 years. I should have closed it after the first year, but I was too stubborn. I was like, no way, I'm going to make this succeed, and it did not.
So if you could be able to do it over again, what would you change to be able to? Would it be the location? Like go, say, to Cedar Rapids rather than...
Oh, Cedar Rapids, I think. You know, after seeing these comic conventions here in Cedar Rapids, holy smokes! You know, we came down to visit the one 3-4 years ago and expected to just be a small little thing, and it was like something out of Chicago. And one of my retailer friends was set up there, and I had to jump behind the table to help him. I was there for 4 hours helping him because people were throwing money at him, just like what you see on the internet. Throw the money at him, you know, it was insane. So I set up there the last 2 years, and it was incredible. This town really is hungry for a
So
You
you've...
ever thought about expanding to Cedar Rapids?
I wish I would have
just
thought
have
about
the
that
one
back in
store.
2003. The thing is that, you know, if I were to expand in Cedar Rapids, first off, it's going to cost me about 40 grand to start, and I'm going to have to be down here and live down here for at least a half a year to get it going. And I'm at the point in my life I really don't want to do that, although the town is hungry for a good store.
I drive to Iowa City to get my cup.
Do
Question.
you? Yeah, daydreams or?
Yeah, Daydreams.
Yeah.
Question for myself also. I've been in the process. There's a place right next door. Like seriously, it's a building. I've always thought of the concept of, since you have an illustration like the library that has several different varieties of books, having a place just like that close nearby, is that a great way to do, like having a business, like pretty much being a parasite and leeching off of another type of business?
You know, we're a destination store in Cedar Falls, so I really, you know, we had all sorts of stores around us in Waverly, and again, the theater right across the street didn't help us at all. So that I can't really.
How does it do for the core? Because I've never seen it in person, but I've heard of it. But, so do you have places by the core that help it out or anything like that?
We had a Marco's Pizza and a video store that just closed down, and a Dollar General that just opened up in its place 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
So
It's
I-
residential,
Wow,
all the way
really?
around.
It is.
There's nothing else.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and because you used to use the movie store for free comic book day because you'd have cosplayers over there for pictures.
Mhm.
And then you guys kind of worked together on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And the last question I'll ask at the moment is the fluctuation of action figures. When Pops came along, or just the concept of them.
Look in the background. My stack of pops.
You can boo me. I hate pop figures.
Thank you. Hate them too.
Now, as a collector, because for me, and I love statues and I love figures, and but to me, they have to look like the character. We were getting phone call after phone call about Funko Pops. Now, I know one of the guys that's in charge that started Funko. I used to buy and sell from him old toys back in the late '80s, early '90s, and me and Priscilla talked with him when Funko first started up at San Diego Comic-Con. They had one little table with some bobbleheads.
Yep, 2000.
These guys are multi-billionaires now.
Yeah.
And we started getting so many phone calls about Funko Pops that I refuse to carry, and that's one thing that you never do, and sometimes my employees always have to slap me on the head. And you don't carry what you like. You carry what the population
Exactly,
likes.
yeah.
Because really, if we only carried anymore what I like at that store, there'd like be 25 comic book titles only and a certain line of action figures and statues and that would be it. No gaming, because I'm not a gamer. But we had to put that stuff in because that's, a store for the most part can't make it selling comic books, just comic books anymore. Funko Pops have grown, taken over a huge percentage of our business. It brings in all new customers.
How do you keep track of all the vendors and everything towards that? Like, well, when having to separate everything
I have
out?
different, I take care of the comic books,
Okay.
and that's all I do anymore. I have a gaming manager who takes care of all the gaming. My wife Priscilla now takes care of all of the Funko Pops, and the bags and the backpacks and all that peripheral stuff. I'll take care of the sideshow statues and whatnot. But you have to divide it up because you can't. There's no way you can
Do it all by yourself.
all anymore. And you got to know what you're doing. I'm not a gamer. Okay, now if a hot game is coming out before David decides to place an order, we'll discuss it. This is going to be super hot, or this new D&D book, which Dungeons and Dragons has just gotten huge again. He just got in 40 copies of the latest book, and we sold half of them the first day. I never would have ordered that many, but he knows what he's doing, and I have faith in him. He's worked for me for 8 to 10 years now. So, but you gotta divide it up, and it's tough being the owner to divide responsibilities up. But I'd go crazy if I had to do it all myself anymore. Yeah.
You're that close.
The concept is you have to be a little mad to be able to do anything.
There's
You do not make money running a comic book shop.
It's a passion.
You don't. It's because you love the stuff.
Yeah.
And I grew up loving comic books, wanting to share that with as many people as I could, wanting to talk about it with people, and just get it, well, just like you and me, we just got excited talking about
Without man thing?
No, I mean just the obscure story of the
Yeah,
hand.
yeah.
Who else is going to know about that? But when we find somebody that does, you go crazy. This
Oh
is
yeah. Oh yeah. Like it's the passion of just knowing that you got to read that and you got to take your own interpretation of that, and then somebody else got to do that. And then the better part is when everybody else gets to see it on screen or anything else like that. But
Yeah.
you weren't like, I read that. I got to see that before anybody else.
We were cool and reading the cool stuff before it was cool. So, a few other things that we do is like for Free Comic Book Day and Halloween Comic Fest. I think we have the largest one in Iowa these days. We block off our parking lot. We get about 2,500 people now for Free Comic Book Day. We have all sorts of cosplayers there. We have superhero battles up on the roof. We have the kids help us take care of, help Spider-Man take out Venom, because we hand the kids silly string, and that's our Spider-Man. We get Spider-Man to lead Venom down, and then the kids, nail Venom with silly string. They love it. I've never seen anything. We have Deadpool there all the time. Last time he had the Infinity Gauntlet on and stood up on the roof and said, "No more Free Comic Book Day. It's Free Banana Day." And then he disappeared and came out with tons of bananas, was handing bananas out, and the kids went crazy. They absolutely went, and that's the thing that we really like now. When you see the smile on the kids' faces and the adults, it makes it all worth it. Kids believe, and we make sure that our cosplayers look like the characters, act like the characters. We don't want them to be out of character. The Halloween Comic Fest, we have a big costume contest outside that all ages are there for. The other thing that we've been doing that I really don't promote too much or talk about too much is we take costume heroes to the Children's Hospital in Iowa City. And that was an eye-opener. I still can't even talk about it but the first time we went there, I was prepared. My cosplayers were not. We had Superman, Wolverine, Spider-Man, and Wonder Woman. And we got into this room with the terminally ill children. We go visit room to room, and they couldn't talk. My cosplayers could not say a thing. I had to quick do all the talking. Hey, you know, we got Superman here, and you know, and to see these kids smile. One nurse told us there was a girl that was paralyzed from the waist down. She'd been there for like 9 months, and we took Superman and Wolverine in there. And before we left, she reached her hands up, and she wanted a hug from Superman and Wolverine. And they gave her a hug, and she smiled. And we left, and the room, and the nurse came out, and she said, she's never smiled the entire time she's been here. And we're just like, it's an incredible, nothing is more rewarding than that. And we've done that now about 6 times. And it's a group called Heroes for Hope that I sponsor, and the Corps takes care of the costs and take care of the costumes. And we, twice a year, usually get over to Iowa City, and it's really been rewarding. Yeah.
What's the concept for in the future? Where with things evolving around us, like having to be able to make things like create them with 3D printers or holograms or everything that is close but still a little bit far away. What is your hopes for the future, and how long do you want to still be able to have your passion to be a store?
Well, I don't plan on retiring.
I was going to say, is that kind of a veiled when are you going to retire?
You know, we've heard,
I'll be right there when you do.
we've heard doom and gloom for years.
He wants to know when you're gonna hand him the keys.
I mean, you know, there was doom and gloom back before Stan started Marvel. You know, it was the comic industry was.
That's why he gave away Spider-Man in the first place.
Digital scared the hell
Digital.
out of us.
Nobody really. A lot of people don't. It's just gotten some people, but it didn't turn out the way everybody thought it was going to. I remember when Diamond, the distributor, was trying to figure out, you know, ways that we could get charged for digital copies and stuff like that, and they had a whole seminar on that, and it never came
To fruition?
Yeah, because it wasn't that big of a problem. Only problem that I have seen that has changed drastically is when we first opened, half our clientele was under the age of 12, half our clientele was above the age of 12. Right now, 80% of my clientele is above college age. No kids read comic books unless their parents read comic books. There are no kids. I have kids that turn down free comic books. Never thought I'd see that happen. Man, if you were giving me a free comic book at age 12, 13, or 10, whatever, greatest thing in the world. But kids do not want to read. They think that all reading is work, and it boggles my mind. Because, but they do know everything about the movies. And people want to know if the movies really increase sales on the comic books. Not really. Not really. They don't want to read. The only time that movies really increase sales, way back when The Crow came out, we sold 200 copies of the graphic novel first 2 weeks after that movie came out. But then again, we were the only people around, and there was no internet. Everybody wanted to read that story. When the first Spider-Man movie came out, people came in. but.
Do you usually see a fluctuation on like a certain like first appearance or anything when like the theoretical like version comes out?
For investment speculation?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's nonstop. Comics are like stocks and bonds, and you watch it, and as soon as something is mentioned, we find that out. You know, I usually find that out because of eBay, because we'll have a comic up there for, we'll have 10 copies up there of something for $3, and all of a sudden all 10 copies are sold. It's like, what's up with this? And we'll go take a look. Oh, it's been mentioned as a movie.
Like to put into play Rocket the Raccoon. Some of his first appearances went for like
All
less
these
than-
comics that were in 50-cent boxes, like Ms. Marvel,
Yeah.
Eternals, you couldn't give Eternals away. Now the first issue is selling for $200, you know,
Exactly.
in good condition. Everybody is now, there's so many speculators, and I expect to see this whole thing crash again at some point. There's too many speculators, not enough readers. People want to do the quick turnaround. And I've had to do that in my stores, limit comics to, if you pre-order the books, you can order as many copies as you want. I'll order them for you. If you come in on New Comic Book Day and you want 20 copies of this comic book, absolutely not. You can have one, because I've ordered what's on the shelf for my regular clientele, and I want to make sure they all get a copy. Every week I have to tell people. I have one guy that keeps coming in, he just doesn't get it. He tries to sneak. He'll buy a stack of comic books and stick like 5 copies in between the different ones, so that I think I won't know. It's like, come on, man, you know, it's 1 copy per person. You can order all you want if you let me know even 2 weeks beforehand. I can get you the copies you want, but they don't want to take the risk. They want the comic shop to take the risk. And they want to wait until the day before new comics come out and see what it says on Bleeding Cool or whatever comic news site that says this is a hot one. And yeah.
When the recession happened back in 2008 or so, did you have problems or anything? Like many other people, they were going through a lot of stuff. But did you have problems with fluctuation, Georgia?
Only problems we ever had was when the whole market crashed in the late 90s. Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think about variants these days?
Variants?
Yes.
I hate them. They're a pain in the butt, and they don't retain their value.
Do you think it destroys the main
It's
storyline?
feeding the speculators again, and of course Marvel will do it where you've got to order, and it's hurting retailers that don't know any better. You can get the 1 in 100 variant if you order 100 copies of this comic book. So you get the one variant, you're lucky you're not going to be able to sell it for what it costs you for the 100 comic books. What do you do with these 100 comic books? Unless you're in a huge metropolitan area.
Are they still doing where you have to order like so many percent above what you did?
Oh my God, that's horrible. Yeah. Marvel will be like, you have to order 52% above this comic book that you ordered 2 years ago. What? We don't even got records for back then. Yeah, and Marvel is ridiculous, where DC will just...
So Diamond keeps track of all of that?
Diamond has stuff going all the way back, yeah. Yeah.
So what do you do if you don't want to do that and they won't sell it to you? What? That isn't.
The 1 in 100 variants?
Or no, that if they say you have to order 52%.
That's to get a variant. That's to get a variant.
To get a variant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Does Wizards do that to you too? As far as like pre-release kits?
No, I think
Booster boxes?
Wizards of the Coast is pretty fair with us. We can order, we can't over order.
Yeah.
But they will see what we order for packs, for boxes of packs,
Or
and then they say,
pre-releases.
okay, you can get this many of this because you've ordered this many. Yeah.
What do you think comic books can do to get kids interested in comics? I just think they cater to their market, which is adults. They don't make comics.
They don't make. We have an all ages section.
Kids just don't want to read.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's really the. And again, the kids that do read comic books are parents that read comic books and have.
I can understand it. I remember I used to always skip the square boxes. I'd only read the word bubbles. You know. Now I can go back and read my old comics.
Paragraph.
Yeah. Descriptors.
Too many words. Do you think DC Comics had an idea where they're trying to get those 100-page comics and
And Walmart?
stuff like that?
Good idea. It would be great if it works, but I haven't heard or seen any.
I think once they took them out of you used to see them in every
Everywhere.
drugstore, every market. I mean, they're always around you.
They were in grocery stores there. Well, we were just at the bookstore, Barnes and Noble in Waterloo, and the only comic book that they had there was that Marvel 1000. And then they had Archie Digests, and that was it.
Yeah, because you used to be able to get comics all the time.
Everywhere. And kids, I went and gave a speech to a bunch of 15-year-olds about the beginnings of comic books. None of them had ever seen a comic book before.
Do you think the reason why is because they've changed it from more because we can produce it easier, hard book and everything else? It's like it looks like an actual book, because with comic books you could just put them in your back pocket and be able to carry them everywhere. Do you think the change of being able to produce something out a lot quicker and have it as more quality is the reason why these people
That could be. A lot of my customers wait for the paperback collections. A lot of the purists, they want the comics and they don't want to wait. They want to read it as it comes out, but then they buy the paperback collection.
I think that a lot of the parents are the ones that are saying, okay, well, but keep it careful, be careful with it.
Yes,
and
yes.
the kids are
We
scared
have
to read it.
Yeah.
Exactly. You wouldn't believe the number of parents that come in the store, first off, that say, you're not old enough to read this. And their whole, Casper the Friendly Ghost or something. You're not old enough, a 3-year-old. Hello, I was looking at comic books at 3 years old. That's what made me want to read. But they're treating their kids as if they're stupid. And you got to do, I got to bite my tongue all the time because you don't dare tell the parents. And then, again, condition-wise, and that's with action figures too. Oh, you're not going to take the Funko Pop figures. Oh, you're not going to take that out of the box because it'll be worthless. How are you going to have any memories that you actually enjoyed the item?
Exactly.
I know I'm a toy collector also. I collect toys from the 60s and 70s. But I'm one of those that have to have it both ways, where I want it out of the package so that I can actually pose it or whatever, and then I want one that's meant in the package. Yeah. But so many parents are like, don't take that action figure out of the package because it won't be. Who cares? Memories are more important than this action figure is going to be $20, 20 years down the road. Let the kid have fun with it. Yeah.
So,
what item do you think has the most sentimental value to you that you own?
Oh, well.
What's your most prized possession that you own? That you
I started
sell?
collecting original comic book.
Besides your wife. In your store.
the next sentence.
This is good. Question.
I met my wife in the comic book shop.
No way, for real?
She used to come in with her boyfriend and she'd buy Wolverine, okay, back in 1988. And then one day she came in and all of her hair was cut off. She came in by herself. And I hollered at her. I didn't know her name, but she used to come, I knew her as a regular. And I hollered out at her. I said, "What the hell did you do to your hair?" Screamed it.
Oh,
And she was like, "Well, I cut it off because I broke up with my boyfriend."
because what else do you do when you break up with your boyfriend?
Exactly.
And so I thought, well, I want to try to impress her. And then she came up to the counter after she got her Wolverine comic. And she said, "Well, everybody else hangs around and talks to you. I might as well." And so then right away I was like, well, time to impress her. Let me take you out to eat somewhere. Red Lobster, something like that. She chose Taco John's.
That's a good woman.
And that night I knew I was going to marry. That night I knew I was going to marry her. I mean, it was that quick. But anyway, my most prized possession is I collect original comic book artwork. I started collecting that back in seriously back in 1998. I'd gotten a few pieces before that, including Man-Thing original art. And again, through all that time, and when the internet first started, I started contacting artists that I loved while growing up. And Frank Bruner, if people are familiar with Frank Bruner, Don Perlin, who did Werewolf by Night was the one that I loved.
He did a variety, but if it wasn't for him, we would have not got Moon Knight technically.
Yeah,
so I'm not
he was the co-creator of Moon Knight.
Yeah.
Did he do Transformers too?
Maybe.
A lot of people hate his artwork, but I was at the right age, loved his artwork for the stories that I read. I called these guys up after finding their information on the internet, and I said, "I would like to commission you to do a drawing for me." And they thought it was a joke. They thought somebody was putting, "What are you talking about? Commission? What?" And so I started commissioning artists back then, before it got big, and got a lot of original artwork. Plus bought pages from them that they still had. So That's probably the most important stuff. The specific ones would be, because there's a little bit of ego in me. Mark Schultz, if anybody's familiar with him, not related to Charles Schultz, he created Xenozoid Tales. You might know him from there was a cartoon in the 90s, early 90s called Cadillacs and Dinosaurs.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay. He had nothing to do with that, and he doesn't like to talk about, but incredible artist. Right up there, people compare him right up there with Michael Kaluta, Bernie Wrightson, you know. But anyway, I ended up becoming friends with him and buying artwork from him, and then I commissioned him to do a piece of me battling natives a la King Kong, with Priscilla tied up between two trees, and I'm swinging an alligator skull, and like an Indiana Jones Johnny Quest type piece.
Hell yeah.
That's my favorite piece,
Yes.
because it's so that's what's most important to me, because I was in the process of creating the artwork, which is neat to work with the artist, and that's what I did with Frank Gruner also. I commissioned him about 5 times, and we did a bunch of artwork together where I'd come up with the idea and he'd execute it for me. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, what was shows like back?
Oh, back comic shows, we started doing, I did my first comic show in I actually did smaller ones, because they were everywhere back in the 80s. But in first Chicago Comic Convention, it was just comic books. Nothing but comic books. No females. There were
Shocker.
no females. In fact, I learned right away when I started taking her to conventions, I gave her a sketchbook and she went around and I said, okay, this guy draws this draws this. And they would spend an hour drawing her a sketch for free because she was a female. Now, if I would have went up and asked for a sketch, I would have gotten, a half a minute quick something, but she got, by Kevin Eastman, spent an hour working on Bill Sienkiewicz doing Electra Assassin for her. Neil Gaiman, we were at Dallas Fantasy Fair, Neil Gaiman's first American comic book appearance. Before the internet, nobody knew what he looked like. Sandman was just ready to explode. It was on like issue 11 or 12 at the time. And I went up to the DC booth because I had told her once we started, I said, you gotta quit reading Wolverine, read Sandman. And so she started reading Sandman, just loved it. Still kept reading Wolverine though, too.
Well,
Wolverine.
except for the newer stuff. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
So I go up to the DC booth and said, yeah, is Neil Gaiman here? And they said, he's right here. So here's this guy who looks like Rick Ocasek, okay? And, well, hey, and I introduced myself and whatnot, and I said, I have a young lady over at this table over there. She drove all the way down here to meet you with me, and she loves your Sandman work. Could you just go over and ask? And we were set up there, and I said, can you go over and ask her if she has any Sandman comics for sale? So he went over, and I'm just kind of watching far off, and she, of course, had no idea. And then I had to go up and tell her afterwards. I said, did anybody come by asking about Sandman comics? And yes, all of a sudden she realized, oh my God. And she ended up spending the entire day with Neil because he had nothing better to do, and at his signings he'd get about 10 people.
These days.
Yeah,
Oh
so
God.
they exchanged, and I'm the big fan. And I just had to live it through her. They ended up exchanging Christmas cards for like 8 years.
Oh, man.
And then Stan Lee, I used to be able to go up to Stan and have no problems. The most people that would be in line would be 20 people. Stan was always gracious, met him numerous times. One time I had him to myself at a retailer convention for about half an hour. And he was standing there over by the punch bowl. I got to this party early, and there's this, lights are down, there's this tall guy standing over by the punch bowl. I just decided to go over and start a conversation, and it's Stan. And I grew up worshiping Stan. And Stan is everything that you'd want Stan to be. He would answer your questions as if he heard them for the first time. Gracious, excited to talk to you. Stan was the best promoter of Stan. That's about what I can say. Yeah.
What would you do for someone that is in their concepts of working on a comic book for the future, and everything, what would you tell them? What is the best steps to go forward to taking what they have and putting it into concepts to one day be on your shelves?
Boy, I really, I've had a lot of customers that have created comic books, and I really, being as I've never tried it myself and don't know about the printing or whatnot, I mean, get something finished, get it out there, maybe get a few pages online to get people's critiques, get people excited about it online. I mean, it's just a whole different world now than it was back then. Back when I used to have people make their own comic books and bring them into the store and we'd sell them, people were just excited to buy them because it was somebody local. I don't think it would work that well today. In fact, I know it doesn't work because last guy I had do that was 5 years ago, and he brought in a bunch, and I said, yeah, we'll give it and I couldn't get people to buy it. So I can't answer that one for you. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say, Mike, I know some of our guests in the back, they have to leave by 7:30, 7:45.
Okay.
So if you want to get to what you brought,
Oh, yeah.
I don't want them to miss out.
Sure.
So
I brought some original artwork.
Yes.
You want to just put it on the tables back there?
Okay.
How would
Yeah.
you- I'll set it up on the table back there. One of them is from old school people. If you remember Erie Magazine?
Yes.
Okay, I have almost a complete story, which was one of my favorite stories.
The original Aries.
Tom Sutton, he
Yep.
was the first artist of Vampirella.
Both Vampirella and he also did stuff in Creep. He was a big horror guy. He didn't
Yeah.
just do Eerie's. He did both Creep and also did Mad too.
So I've
He
got,
enjoyed all
I have
of them.
almost an entire story of that, along with the original printings. You can compare it to the.
Now, which one do you have in your hand?
This is Erie number 22 from
Oh, okay.
1968, I believe.
Okay, absolutely.
And then I brought some, if you're familiar with, I think this is how you pronounce his name, Paul Pelletier. Best Hulk artist ever.
Yep.
Next to, you got the comic, you brought the comic.
From the
Smart
90s.
Hulk.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Professor Hall.
Yeah, Professor.
Yeah,
Hall.
Professor Hall.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those were.
So I got his artwork, and the difference
I've had this
between
one several times.
what I found out in collecting artwork these days is that back in the day, an inker would take the pencils of the artist and they would ink over the actual pencils on the page. That's not how it's done anymore. What they do now is they make a blue line copy of the pencils if they actually do the pencils by hand and not do them on the computer, which I can't stand because it's done on the computer, there's no physical artwork anymore.
Exactly.
And they'll now ink over the blue line so that the penciler has his original art to sell and the inker has his original art to sell, so that they don't have to fight over who gets what and so on and so forth. And one thing they also don't do anymore is they don't put the word balloons on the pages. It's all done by computer. And to me, original artwork should have the word balloons on it, because I think that's all part of the story and all what makes it special. And so what I did with the Hulk pages that you see over here, I photocopied the word balloons and put the art in Mylar sleeves, and then pasted the word balloons on the top of the Mylar where they're supposed to go, so you actually get the story. So anyway, yeah, those will be over there. You guys can peruse at any time. You can set that over there.
I gotta show.
Say what?
Can I show you something real quick?
Yeah, any other questions? I'm try my best to give you the best answers I
You need
can.
to go up to the shop.
Now I can because this is
You
amazing.
needed to beforehand. Yes, he did.
These are all different parts of.
The story, yeah, this page is here. If you just keep going through, it matches up with what he has here for the artwork. So he's got like 10 pages here from this story for the actual artwork.
That's from Erie.
This is an Erie. This is 1960. Copyrighted 69.
That's older than me.
By much.
Oh my god. I mean, this stuff looks so good up close.
Place he has a hallway in. it's just beautiful all the way through.
Actually, I like it.
I mean,
With the word
I would struggle just to buy one decent panel, and this is like, this is prime right here.
I actually like how he did the word balloons
Yeah.
on top. It looks cool.
We had a interim Mender up there a couple years ago who did Spawn, and he worked for Marvel Comics for a while, and Spider-Man, and he was up there.